Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. I am Dan Scott. It is good to have you with us. Hope that you have had a great week so far, and going to go for a run this week with men's cross-country and indoor track coach Robert Gary. How you doing?
Good. Excited for the season to finally start for the men's side of things.
And I guess, although technically for a while you've been coaching the men and Rita has been coaching the women, but it's not been just, a couple of months ago that they officially made the designation in the athletic department to give her the title. So when I say men's coach now, that's the official designation.
We try to do everything together. I'm theoretically, I think, the director, but that's really just so one person can handle the money, and it's not good if Rita's handling the money. So, other than that, nothing's really changed as far as, her role.
Now, would you have said that about the money if she was sitting here with you?
Oh, she would probably agree if she was really
was
being honest, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you say nothing's really changed there. Not much has changed with the program. Ho-hum, another conference championship in the fall with the cross-country teams, both of them 12 in a row now. Does it ever get old?
No, not at all. Especially this year, it was extra special just because we were competing at home, and we had both programs are in a pretty similar spot. We got some older people kind of leading the way, but we got a lot of young people, biggest recruiting class we've ever had in 12, 13 years. So kind of integrating them to the tradition and the culture, and hopefully, they're around for winning, 13, 14, et cetera, from there. So it was a fun fall.
I'm obviously more familiar with other sports when it comes to integrating younger players into a system, especially one that's been highly successful. When you bring in such a large recruiting class to a successful program like you've had, what's that process like to not only get them up to speed, pun intended, on what it's like to be a Division I collegiate athlete, but oh, by the way, this is the standard we have here at Furman, and we don't expect it to go backwards.
Yeah, I think if we've made a mistake, it's probably been, pushing people along a little bit too much, or sometimes letting them kind of go or whatever. All these kids were highly successful in high school. They were state champions. They were, Nike qualifiers, Foot Locker qualifiers, ranked throughout the country. And so they're not used to kind of getting in the back of the line or anything else. So I think one of the things we've been doing a lot more of is making sure that we kind of use a redshirt season, with all the, changes that are happening in the NCAA. We really just need to become a program that's a little deeper than we have been in the past, such that we can kind of redshirt when we need to. And there's very few true freshmen that can come right in and really rock and roll, which I think kind of speaks volumes of how, healthy and kind of high level of excellence we have in our program. But a lot of them do need a year, whether it's, academically living on their own or, just physically, maturing, getting a little bit older. But that's something that we do try to provide, make sure we don't move them along too quickly.
And then when you have that success, you can point to and say, if you are willing to, as Bob Ritchie likes to say, work while you wait, this is what we have been able to accomplish as a program. And then you can also start pointing to individuals who have had phenomenal success on both the men's and the women's side. No one more so than Dylan Schubert this year, who finished third in the nation at the NCAAs.
Yeah. I mean, it was an incredible performance, highest finish we've ever had. Aaron Templeton in fifth was our, previous best. Ali Bihalski seventh. So we've had some people up there in the top 10, and then even more so if we can stretch back to 20th. But to see Dylan up there kind of with this influx of foreign athletes that have kind of entered the NCAA, as well as some, older people, he's a perfect example of, here's a fifth year. Had we, not redshirted, at some point, he would have missed out on, doing something so special and kind of leading the program, leading the team. And so, it was a really remarkable run by him. And I think also just reiterated, boy, if we can get these kids for a fifth year, we have a really, really nice streak. I think for a little while there, we had anybody who was a fifth year was at least an All-American, which is a pretty nice stat to have. So,
how do the kids that you asked to redshirt, how do they respond during that redshirt year, and then how do they look back on it later in their careers? And I ask you that because after the basketball game against Mercer the other night, we had, or the Saturday afternoon, we had Edrin Bronson on, who redshirted last year. And I think Tom asked him the question about how difficult that was, and he admitted that it was very difficult not to play last year, but he sees the advantage now as a redshirt freshman, what he has been able to gain from that. What do you see, or what do you hear from the runners that you asked to redshirt that year versus the way they respond and what they say later in their careers?
Well, I think the climate's certainly changed, and kids are certainly smart enough. I think it used to be a bit of a, am I getting cut from the team? When I was coming out of high school, if I didn't get to compete, I would just assume that I was on the JV or something else. I think in track, it's a little bit different. They can train with the team, and then we can also send them off to some races. So it's not like they're just sitting on the sidelines. But it is tough, because one of the things I think our kids enjoy the most is, traveling throughout the country, going to all these meets together, time in the hotel, fun stuff that we try to do, before, after meets, all that jazz. So kind of going from, doing that all the time in high school, and then kind of some of that being stripped away. But I do think they realize, hey, I could probably barely be, competitive or be a part of things right now, but boy, I bet you by my 5th year, I could really do something special. And, you have performances like, not only Dylan at the national meet, but also Carson Williams, just missing All-American by 1 or 2, whereas, Carson's freshman year, he wouldn't even have made our travel team. So, sometimes you redshirt because, you're really good and we think you can be even more special. Sometimes you do redshirt because you're just not quite good enough. I don't think there's, much issue with it anymore. I think kids are open to doing it in our sport.
So what does it do for a program like, quote-unquote, Little Old Furman when you have a Dylan Schubert finish 3rd in the nation?
Well, I think it's huge. I think when we first started the program, we kind of had Furman Elite going here, and it was obviously a group of athletes that were, competing at the very highest levels, whether it's, Olympic trials or world championships, those types of things. I think, we always try to paint a picture of we're a small school with big school resources. We're very fortunate, and there's no ceiling over your head. And, Dylan did a phenomenal job. I think one of the most impressive things about Dylan is he was good. He was a good to slash, very good recruit in cross country. He was not a great recruit. He was not a Foot Locker, top 10 guy or Nike national, someone that needed the time to kind of develop. And there's a lot of kids that kind of need that, but he was at altitude, so he didn't have a lot of the track times. Those are just now coming along, but he's already qualified for the NCAA indoor meet now in his first chance. And I would argue that the NCAA indoor track championship is probably one of the toughest NCAA meets to make, because it's just flat out the top 16 times in the country. So, sometimes people just need time, not wasted time, deliberate, intentional time, but they do need more than just first year when, what they're going up against.
So that means that Rita has to be able to look, your staff has to be able to look at someone and project what you believe they're going to be able to do 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And I can see where a football coach is going to look at a kid and say, okay, his body is going to fill out. He's going to be able to put on X amount of weight, and we'll get the muscle on him, and we believe he'll be able to do this. How does that projection work when you're trying to figure out what like a Dylan Schubert, who you said was good but not quote-unquote great coming out of high school? He's great now. How do you project that?
Well, I think, you look and, while there's not the bodies maybe of a football player that, can or needs or wants to, gain 30 pounds of muscle, we certainly don't have those kind of guys lurking around, but you can see the level of maturity in some people's bodies. We got some kids without a single chest hair still that haven't even shaved, some of our incoming freshmen. So giving them an extra year. But I think it's also they get with other guys. I think the big thing is we had that huge recruiting class. So we had 7 or 8 guys kind of redshirting together. And so they do form their own kind of little team. They go off to some of these other meets where they kind of got to pay their own ways and everything. So, I think people sometimes think redshirting is like, the first hour and a half of Rudy, where he's running around in some old gray sweatpants and there's no coaches, no teammates, no fanfare. They still receive coaching. They still receive, opportunities to kind of race and PR. Sometimes our kids that are redshirting race more often than our actual cross-country, varsity team or whatever, because it's such a short season. So, I think it's just getting an opportunity to get some good training blocks, jumping some levels up, getting to race, hit and reset, and just doing that a couple times throughout a year.
Yeah, but back to the original question, how are you able to project what a kid as a high school freshman might be 4 years down the road?
Different people come in with different training backgrounds, you know. For example, we have a young man, Colin Ackerman, who came right in and competed for us as a freshman this year. He wasn't part of the rest of the group, rest of the class, but he was also someone who, you know, was pretty well accomplished in both cross country and track. He had a lot of experience in the weight room. He was running 75 to 80 miles a week. You know, you juxtaposition that with some kids that, you know, maybe didn't even run indoor track, so it wasn't year-round training yet. They'd never been above 45, 50 miles a week. The transition in, I think, was much more. And, you know, you hope you're always kind of holding the kid back. He really wanted to run. He saw that we were going to have a special team, particularly with Dylan and Carson up at the front. You know, he could be a guy in there to help us get back to the national meet. I do feel like we had a team that may have been as high as top 10 in the country. But, you know, it's tough to make the national meet. We still had a great national meet. We finished 17th, so top 20 is always our kind of, you know, a goal or whatever on, you know, different years. So, you know, different kids kind of, I think their background really kind of dictates what we're going to do with them their freshman year. And a lot of it's just training load, what you've been able to handle.
Talking cross country and track, now the indoor track season getting underway with men's track coach Robert Gary here on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. As we transition to the indoor season, what will your runners specifically be focusing on?
Well, as usual, we're, you know, obviously a distance-heavy program, 800 to 5K, and it's really just a matter of, you know, getting kids some significant PRs. I think all those people that we redshirted, we never feel like we want to redshirt indoor track. Asking a kid to go a whole year redshirting, I think, is just asking too much. So indoor's great. It's a short season. We've actually delayed the start of our season this year all the way up until this weekend. So a lot of times we'd have already had a meet, but we're basically just going to race almost every weekend in February and see where we are at the end of it. We do have a couple guys that are looking to make it to the NCAA championships. I think we have 6 guys that can break 4 in the mile. So, you know, just getting some good levels. Like I said, making the NCAA indoor meet, I don't want that to be the barometer of our program, because very few programs around the country have more than 1 or 2 guys that can do that, just because it's so, you know, it's so competitive. But nice thing about track is, you know, any kid can go and get a PR. You can see momentum, development moving forward. And those are things that we want to try to get for each kid. And then we'll look up and see who's going to redshirt during the spring and, you know, just hit reset and just kind of keep building like that.
You kind of glossed over the 6 kids you thought that could get a sub 4-minute mile. That's kind of become a thing for your program here over the last few years. More and more of your runners are breaking that 4-minute mile mark.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've had true freshmen do it up to seniors that might have been a little bit more distance heavy. I think really to be competitive, to make it to the NCAA championships, you got to break 4 in the mile, even if you're not a miler. I think it's kind of a prerequisite. And these indoor races are nice. Like even this weekend, you know, Dylan's just going to serve as a rabbit, and we're going to see how many guys we can get close to 4 minutes or just there under. It'd be a pretty significant PR for a lot of these guys. So indoor's nice. You can really kind of control things and just go after times. And really there's nothing competitive to do until we get to the SoCon meet and the NCAA championships. So Dylan's going to get a late start. He took a big break after running his NCAA qualifier. He ran 13:17, so he's ranked 5th in the country right now in the 5K. And now he's just working back, trying to get ready for that. Carson's kind of the same way. We have him set up to run a couple miles. He'll need to run 3:53, 3:54 to make it to the NCAA championships. So he made it last year, and he wants to kind of see what he can do this year, obviously. And everybody else really just trying to kind of get as many times as possible and, you know, again, just make that jump and see what's going on for outdoors.
So do you use the indoor season basically as prep for the next fall, or is it its own, in your eyes, standalone season?
I think for the people who really run cross country, I'd say cross country and outdoor track are the 2 focuses, and they use indoor. For the people that didn't have much of a cross country season, we really try to preach indoor rolling right into outdoor track. Whether you're redshirting or not, you know, it's just a good, you know, opportunity to get a big base, get your training load up, catch up to the NCAA, particularly if you're a younger guy, but also a lot of mid-distance guys. We got a lot of 800 milers that, you know, 10,000 meters of cross country is just too long. So we got a lot of different people doing different things. And I think one of the things that we really focus on, men and women, and probably a topic that we discuss more in our staff meetings than anything, is we really want everybody working towards something. I think that's really infectious. Some people have Dylan and Carson want to sign a pro contract. They have sexier goals maybe than other guys, but we got some other people that, hey, they want to break 150 for the first time in the 800. They want to be a sub 4 minute miler once. These are things that Dylan and Carson have certainly done repeatedly. They're fifth year seniors now, so it's kind of what we want out of our fifth year seniors, but making sure that everybody's working towards something is a tremendous asset. And it's one of the benefits of having kind of a small program. You get into a locker room where everybody's really rocking and rolling, really focused, really doing things, and you can't tell who's a super stud athlete and who's someone who's a little bit more developmental, just because everybody's so involved and intentional in it.
But regardless of the sport, regardless of the era, isn't that the mark of a competitor, that you're always striving for something? You're always trying to find a way to improve, a way to get better, whether it's a time on the cross country run, or on the indoor track, or whether you're a football player trying to shave something off your 40 or get your footwork better. If you're an offensive lineman, you're always trying to improve.
Yeah, and then multiply that in a group, dynamic where if you have other people doing it as well, I think that's the real magic, and I think that's something that we have really focused on at Furman. And to be honest, I think we do it as well as anybody else in the country. And without doing it, I don't think we'd be able to keep up, as a national, distance running group.
Is it because you've got the internal competition and you can push one another?
Yeah, and I also think it's the same kind of mindset. You come to Furman, you want, kind of a small school. You want to be on, you don't want to just be a number, be it in the classroom or on the team. A lot of track teams have 70, 80, 90 people. We really cap ourselves at 20 to 22. So, there's nowhere to hide. I think as a coach in this day and age, you're always trying to hit that pinpoint of, challenge plus care. But I'm still a believer. I've been coaching long enough to believe that, challenge is a privilege, and people want to have expectations on them. I think that, I always felt when I was an athlete that that's a coach who believes in me, that really thinks I can do certain things and isn't just going to let me kind of get by with just being a cog in a machine and not really contributing to anything.
So, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but because this is a distance-heavy program, when we're talking about outdoor track, indoor track, are you really trying to compete for team championships? Because there are some things that you're not competing in, right? Some events that you're not competing in. Yeah. So is it more about individual championships as far as your program is concerned?
I guess. I think, we're never going to have the bodies to show up to the SoCon meet and probably win a title. That's true. But we're actually lurking pretty close to second or third. And one of the things we've talked about is getting a trophy. We just really need to corner the market in the distance event. Top two teams do get a trophy. And anytime you get over 100 points, which we've done maybe 3/4 of the times we've been here, you're in the hunt to get a trophy. So if we were ever to get second, it would feel like we won. And, and we take it real seriously. It's not like we don't double guys or, run people in specific events or some team tactics to really try to work together. So it's definitely the focus of our indoor season. But, leading into it, we do want to get as many PRs as possible. Those are things to celebrate as well. And then when it comes to the NCAA championship, the teams that win, are top 10. Some of them only have 2, 3, 4 athletes. There was a year I was coaching Ohio State. We got 4th in the country. It was only with 4 athletes. So you don't really think of a team thing at NCAA, but the points are so precious that if you have 1 or 2 or 3 studs, if somehow Dylan and Carson were to each win an event at the NCAA championships, we'd be a top 12 team in the country with 20 points. So it's not necessarily a ton of bodies. It's a little bit more high quality. But I do love the conference meet where we really try to see how many points we can score in these distance events. It adds up quick. We got the DMR. We got a 4x4. We have the occasional sprinter. We've had a football player come out and win the shot for us. So we're kind of looking to how we can kind of piece it together and score over 100 points and get a trophy there too.
Well, yeah, and I guess that's kind of what I was wondering. Do you have someone throwing the shot? Do you have someone throwing the javelin? Do they even do the hammer toss? I mean, do they do all of those things? And what do you compete in and what don't you compete in?
We're open to just about everything except the pole vault. It's just, we don't have a throws coach, we're mostly sprinters. We're basically on the track. I think even like the high jump, we don't have anybody. We could certainly do it. And if kids want to do it and come to Furman anyway, we certainly look into it. But for the most part, our focus is on the 800 and further.
We're talking cross country and track with Robert Gary on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. So kind of walk us through what the spring will look like and then the transition to the summer before you start rolling things back around to the cross country season next fall. What will the next, let's say, 3 to 5 months look like for your program?
Well, like I said, we'll have indoor track leading into the SoCon championships, which ends, which is March 1st. We then got a month until our outdoor opener with the NCAA indoor championships in between there. But like I said, I'm thrilled that we have one guy already qualified. Love to get 2 or 3 more to go to that, to kind of bridge that gap. So those guys will get a later start, but everybody else last weekend in March. And then we basically have 6 weeks of kind of every other week racing, throughout the country, leading into the SoCon championships, which once again, May 12th and 13th, Monday, Tuesday, and that's going to be at Sanford. And then it's basically every 2 weeks to go to the NCAA regional meet, to go to the NCAA championships, to go to the USA championships. And then we also have a lot of people kind of earmarking the under 20 championships, which is a couple days after USA. So we keep going all the way up until about August 1st. And then the month of August is spent kind of finishing off prep, depending on when your season ended. We meet back at the end of August, school starts and cross country starts.
So in the immediate, coming up at the end of this month, the men will be Carolina, correct?
Yes, sir.
On Friday, the 31st, and Saturday, February the 1st, at the Gamecock Challenge.
Yep.
And the women, those same 2 days, will be just down the road in Clemson at the Bob Pollock Invitational. And you can find out more on the schedule by going to FurmanPaladins.com and just negotiating to track and field. You'll be able to catch all of the results there as well, and even some of the meets you can watch them like you could have back on January the 17th and 18th at the Vanderbilt Invite. That was actually on ESPN Plus, so you could have caught some of that there as well. Are you finding you're getting more and more of that kind of thing where people can now watch what you guys are doing in real time?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a real niche in the track world, distance world with some smaller stuff, but some of the ESPN things that are picking things up, I think that's fantastic. We also, to be honest, we have an incredible parent group that seems like we do try to pick like Clemson, USC, at least schools that are close by, our campus, so people get. But we got a great traveling parent gang, we call them. I started a group me for them, which I'm not sure was a tremendous idea, because that thing blows up sometimes with questions. But it's a great thing to kind of look up and be able to see. I remember when I was, competing, I used to love when my parents could get to a meet. We try to do things, in advance as much as possible so they can make plans. So, I think it's a good opportunity to kind of watch a lot of stuff.
Well, before we get out of here, can we talk about the most important thing that we haven't gotten to yet? That you've got a new wardrobe assistant now?
Oh, yeah. Well, my son has started to tell me that I dress like a bit of an old man, so this was a jacket he picked out, and so I feel very drippy wearing this, so it's good.
Yeah. Well, you gotta stay. Did the kids even say hip anymore?
No, I think maybe only you actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, you know what?
Yeah.
That's what I get for hanging. The only kids I hang out with are my grandchildren. So what do I know?
Well, my son has hit the area where he's embarrassed to be seen with me, so I know that I know that I got to clean it up a bit.
But that's also a position of power for a parent.
Oh yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. When I'm doing drop off, if you better do what I want, or I'm going all the way there. Kiss and I love you, and everything.
Absolutely. It is, as always, Ben, it's great to catch up with you. I'll encourage people again to go to FurmanPaladins.com to the track and field section, and you can find out everything that's going on with the program. Anything that we didn't cover today?
No. I think real excited for both programs to get started. We're both in a good spot and building up with a lot of these young kids, so we're excited to see where we go.
Well, as I said, it is great to catch up with you, as always, and I believe it's either the second or third week in March we'll be getting Rita in here to get her version of events and see what goes from there. Next week, on Monday, the 3rd, Clay Hendricks will be with us, and we'll be talking with him, I think, 2 weeks, maybe a little less than 2 weeks ahead of the start of spring football practice. Stacy Johnson-Whitfield on the 10th, Jeff Hull on the 17th, Michelle Dasso on the 24th. That's the February schedule for Inside Furman Athletics. And also don't forget that if you can't catch the video, but you want to hear what's going on, we have the brand new audio-only podcast available. Right now, you can go to Podbean, you can go to Spotify, you can go to Odyssey, you can go to iHeart and just search for Inside Furman Athletics. It'll be there. We're working on getting it on Apple. That's more of a process, hopefully sooner rather than later. Robert, thank you again.
All right, thanks for having me.
That is Robert Gary. I am Dan Scott. We will see you again next week. Until then, God bless you, and so long, everybody.